What is up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over the Season 2 close range meta. I'm going to be using all the tools on TGD today to help us try to figure out what the meta is. So we are going to just add all the Black Ops SMGs to this for now, and then I'll go look at the rest of the weapons as well. Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, and see if any of those fit in anywhere in here. So we'll just add all these. We've got Black Ops 6 SMG, add. Put all those in there. So we do have the new PPSh-41 on the site. It doesn't have any attachments yet. I'm working on the attachment code, so they reworked the stats menus. So the code that I use to pull attachment stats has to be reworked. It's very close to being finished. So hopefully in the next day or two, I'll have all the attachments updated for all the weapons, as well as all the base stats. Right now, all the damage profiles on TGD are up to date for Season 2, but the base stats besides the damage profile, so like ADS time, sprint to fire, movement speeds, those things got changed a lot in this patch as well. Those are not quite up to date yet, so those will be coming very, very soon. So we are down here at the TTK chart now. This is just where I'm going to start today. So we'll set the end of the TTK chart to about 35 meters, and then set it to combination 300 health. So looking at this right now, this is just the Black Ops 6 SMGs. TTK tends to be really, really important for close combat, just because you don't miss a lot of shots. So recoil isn't as important. It's still important, of course, because you do have some fights that are out there 15, 20 meters with SMGs, and that's where recoil ends up being really important. But yeah, the TTK in the first 10 or so meters tends to always be a really, really important stat for SMGs. So looking at this, we can see the Kompact in green here. This has the best TTK out to 11 meters or 10.5 meters. Pretty solid past that as well, from 11 up to about 20. It's still very good. And then second place, the PPSh. PPSh has really good damage range, so out to 15.5 meters for that first range, and just a little bit slower. It's about 25 milliseconds slower than the Kompact, which is a reasonably significant difference, but it's going to kind of come down to like mobility and how accurate these guns are more than anything for that extra 35 milliseconds to see if that's important. And then the rest of them really kind of sit in the same spot. They're all right in the same area except the Jackal PDW, which got a really big nerf for Season 2. So it's now completely out of the meta. But the rest of the weapons here, the C9, the SOG, the PP19, KSV, Tanto, those all kind of sit right in that 660, 670 millisecond range in the first damage drop-off, which is quite a bit slower than something like the Kompact or the PPSh. But if they have really good recoil or just really good ADS mobility, things like that, those can kind of bring them back up into the meta a little bit. For this video, I actually wanted to use a feature that doesn't exist yet on TGD, so I just went and prototyped it real fast in Python, and we'll be bringing it to the site as a new premium feature pretty soon. It's very similar to the true TTK simulation tool, only it's just going to apply to a normal TTK chart. So you guys have probably seen this before. This is a premium feature on TGD where you can basically run a simulation based on your accuracies that you pull from the firing range. So you plug in your accuracy 50%. I just put those in there just to show you guys how this works. And then you simulate it, and it'll calculate out like your real TTK based on those accuracies at all ranges using some clever assumptions and math. And you can look in individually as the TTK gets worse because more shots are missed as the range increases. It also includes bullet velocity, damage drop off, all that stuff. But this is the thing I'm talking about down here. So engagement probability by distance. What this does is it takes these points along this curve and multiplies all these curves, all the TTK chart curves, by this value, and then scales them. And then that results in one singular TTK value that's like a weighted TTK based on where you put this curve. So you can move the curve around. So if you're doing close range, you'd probably want something like a mean of like 4, and then a standard deviation of like 7. So this brings the most important engagements inside about 10 meters, maybe more like a mean of 5, and a standard deviation of 8 might be a little better. So that's like really inside in 15 meters is super important. And then from 2 up to 10 is extremely important. And then what you do is you just calculate, and it'll give you the ranked TTK based on those weightings. So you can adjust this for how you think you play, where your engagements happen. It's a pretty powerful tool. So I wanted to do something like that, but for the normal TTK chart, and we don't have that right now. The reason I wanted to do it with the normal TTK chart instead of the simulation tool is because SMGs up close, like I mentioned at the beginning, are super accurate. So you don't really need to incorporate the accuracy so much inside like 15 meters. For the most part, you're just going to be either accurate or not with the gun. So I just wanted to use it on the regular combination TTK. So that's what I did, and we'll go look at that now. All right, prepare yourself for a flashbang. I couldn't make this dark mode, so it's going to be super bright screen here. So this is the output from my quick little Python code that I wrote. Like I said, this will be coming as a premium feature to TGD pretty soon. So you can see the PDF overlaid on top. That's the black dotted line. That's the weighting. So you can see it peaks at 5 meters, and then anything from 0 up to about 10 is super, super important. And then that importance tapers off towards longer ranges. So basically every one of these TTK values is multiplied by that and weighted across that range out to 25 meters. So looking at this right away, we've got the PPSh in this blue color. It's kind of hard to see. Again, I just threw this together really fast for this video. So PPSh is pretty good TTK all the way out. Has longer range than most other weapons, which is actually very important, but it is a little less accurate, so keep that in mind. But the strength of this tool is that it outputs a single TTK. So one, it found all the weapons that were close. So there's some other surprises in here, like Lachmann, Shroud, Striker, WSP9, AMR9. Those are all RAM9. Those are all in the top 15 weapons. So let's go look at the actual output from this as far as the individual TTK values. All right, so these are the values that output from that code, the weighted PDF weighted TTK across that curve. So PPSh-41 comes out on top, 0.64 seconds, so 640 milliseconds. Within 5 milliseconds is the Kompact 92. The Striker actually still is very good, comes out at about 10 milliseconds worse than the PPSh. WSP9, so this code is just pretty bare bones, so it doesn't include open bolt delay. So this would actually be down about here if you added the open bolt delay, somewhere in this range. So it's still pretty good, but just not quite as good as it looks on this chart. Again, open bolt delay matters sometimes, doesn't matter other times, but it's going to be a little worse than it seems like it is on this chart. AMR9 is actually pretty close up there too, within 20 milliseconds, 25 milliseconds of the PPSh in the number one spot. The C9 does pretty well at 670 millisecond TTK, so very good there. RAM9. Lachmann Shroud's a surprise one here. Again, the code was rudimentary in Python, so it didn't include like the burst timings into the TTK. But I believe in the first range, the Lachmann Shroud's burst timings actually make the TTK better than it looked like it was on this. So we'll check that out as well. So Rival 9's pretty good. KSV, FJX Horus, these are all a little worse. So I would probably stick to these top weapons here. So we're going to look at the PPSh-41, Kompact 92, Striker. I'm going to skip the WSP. I've covered that a million times. It's a great gun. It's just going to be a little slower to kill. AMR, C9, RAM9, Lachmann Shroud, and Rival 9 are the ones I'm going to look at. All right, in old school Tony fashion, I went way too deep into this and really dove into the stats to try to figure out what's the best right now, and this is what I came up with. So we've got that weighted TTK number from the feature that's coming that I just showed you guys over on the left. That's obviously one of the most important things, but then accuracy becomes very important as well. We've got the 25 meter accuracy that I just tested in the firing range myself. So on here, the Striker was extremely accurate for me, really the most accurate actually. The Lachmann Shroud is burst. So the Lachmann Shroud, in reality, when the player is moving and stuff, it's going to be much harder for me to hit targets with. So this one's kind of not really an 85%. So Striker's super, super accurate. The AMR9, C9, both very accurate as well. And then we have the PPSh and Kompact as the next two most accurate. So PPSh and Kompact and Striker are looking pretty good. AMR C9 looking pretty okay so far. But let's move on to the rest of the options here. So iron sights are important for SMGs because they give you an extra attachment. So the best iron sights for sure are the C9, the Lachmann Shroud, and the Rival 9. PPSh is okay. Kompact is okay. Striker's okay. AMR9's terrible. So yeah, I would say AMR is the worst. Compact's the second worst. Striker, PPSh are kind of interchangeable. They're both usable, I would say, but not great. C9's awesome. So that gives you an extra attachment on the C9. So what I did was I built out these guns in what I think the meta loadout would be, and then just measured the important stats of those. So ADS, sprint to fire movement, sprint movement speed, and ADS movement speed are what we've got on here. So ADS with my build for the PPSh is phenomenal. 165 milliseconds is crazy fast, way faster than anything else on this list. But you can see that that's balanced by having bad sprint to fire. So the idea behind my PPSh build that I'm going to give you guys is that it's super long damage range, really fast ADS movement speed, really fast movement speed in general, but you're not going to be great at like, sprinting at someone and firing right away, which is what sprint to fire tells you. So that's the downside. But every other situation, basically I want you to replace sprinting into a room with ADS movement into a room. So you're going to have crazy fast ADS and movement, and ADS movement. So that way you can like, just ADS walk around and you'll be moving very quickly. And maybe you might even be able to dodge some bullets with that 4 meters per second ADS movement speed. So PPSh is looking really good. The only downside is the sprint to fire. And if you play with this build and you can't handle it, you can just swap the stock that I have. And again, we'll get into that later. Kompact 92, the way I built it, 235 ADS time, 110 sprint to fire. So bad ADS time, pretty good sprint to fire, one of the better ones, and then pretty good movement across the board. So pretty good all-arounder there. The ADS time is just a pain. And I built these the best that I possibly could. So there was no way for me to really get that down any lower. Striker, this one's just pretty good across the board. The one thing that it suffers from is movement speed, and that's just because it is a Modern Warfare 3 gun. So all these are really good. The iron sights are okay. ADS time is pretty okay. Sprint to fire is good, but then your movement speeds are very slow, especially like ADS movement down to 3.1. One of the slower ones on this list, so that's kind of unfortunate. I do think it's very good still. It's just the movement that's going to hurt you a lot. The AMR9, this one just, in my opinion, didn't really work out with the build. It's kind of like the Striker, but just a little bit worse. So worse TTK, worse accuracy, worse iron sights, worse ADS time, a little bit better sprint to fire, and then worse in all movement categories. So I think the AMR is just kind of out of the running. C9, we've got awesome iron sights like I talked about. We have really good ADS time, one of the worst sprint to fire times, but still 25 milliseconds faster than the PPSh and sprint to fire. So that's not that bad, because a lot of people will be running the PPSh. Really great movement speed, 5.8 meters per second base movement speed is awesome, but most of the time you're going to be sprinting. So sprinting is more in line with the PPSh. PPSh is a little bit faster. It also has good ADS movement speed. So the way I view this, the C9 is very much an all-rounder pick. It's going to be a little less accurate and a little bit worse TTK than the Striker, but it makes up for it in having better ADS and dramatically better movement. So I think the C9 is a very, very good weapon in this season. It's very consistent, just going to be a good contender all around. Ram 9, you can see I put strikes through it, and that's because as soon as I use this thing in the firing range, the recoil is just awful. So you're not going to want to use this. I didn't even test the rest of it because the recoil was just terrible compared to the other options. Lachmann Shroud, 679. Like I said, I think the TTK is actually better than that when you include the burst values. So it's probably more like 650, so that'd put it up more like in the Striker territory. Accuracy is crazy. It has no recoil. It just recenters to the exact same point every time, but it is a burst weapon, so it's hard to use, hard to fire those bursts off as quick as possible while still tracking a target. At least for me on mouse and key, I have a hard time with that. So the real TTK probably is worse than this compared to these automatics. But it's crazy, crazy accurate, just hard to track at the same time. Iron sights are very good. ADS time is excellent. Sprint to fire time is second best on the list, just behind the AMR. Very good. Movement speed's kind of bad, again, just because it's an older weapon, and the older weapons are impacted by the magazines a lot in terms of movement speed. So ADS movement speed's awful. Sprint movement speed's awful. Regular movement is okay. So Lachmann Shroud's interesting. It's a contender, but those movement speeds just really hold it back, and the fact that it's a burst weapon, so it's a little harder to hit those shots consistently. Rival 9 is not bad, 680 millisecond weighted TTK, not super accurate, down to 54%. So I hit fewer shots with the Rival than I did the PP or the Kompact. Iron sights are good, ADS, sprint to fire, very good, and then movement's just pretty good across the board. So the Rival is a contender as well. I just kind of think it's basically the C9, just a little bit worse. So something, if you want to mix it up, you can try it, but I think the C9 is just kind of a better, slightly better version than the Rival. It's going to be a little more accurate, slightly better TTK, and better movement speeds. I don't want to waste your time today, so I'm just going to go through these builds really quickly. So this is the Rival 9. We've got monolithic suppressor, Rival 38 fire starter barrel, 50 round mag, Rival Vice assault grip, EXF close quarters assault stock. So that gives those stats that I showed in the previous screen on sheets. And you can see here, very, very accurate. It's a little bouncy, but the recoil itself is pretty easy to control, and it has pretty good ADS time, pretty good ADS movement. It feels pretty good all around. Like I said, it's just a little bit worse than the C9, I think. All right, on to the Lachmann Shroud. The downside of this build is it does have the laser light on it, so You are going to be visible whether you're ADS or not. The laser will be visible, but we have the slate reflector, and that's just because I couldn't really find an attachment that I felt like was really worth using in the slot. So it just gives you better iron sights, essentially, a better optic, but nothing else really seemed worth it. So we've got the optic, the XRK Edge, BW4 hand stop, 50 round mag, FT mobile stock, and then the Kimura laser light. So let's take this into the firing range. You'll see what I mean. I mean, this thing literally doesn't have recoil, so you can just click as fast as you want, and it hits the same spot every time. Overall, it's a pretty good gun. I mean, I think it's just tough to hit your shots, like I'm saying, especially on mouse, because your firing button, the left click, is in contact with the thing that you're using to aim directly. Like on a controller, when you're pulling the trigger to fire, it's not really like moving your thumb very much, but when you're left clicking on a mouse, for me, it changes how I'm moving the mouse a little bit. So it's a little harder to aim with this than normal. And that whole time you have to maximize the burst rate to get that really good TTK. So it's a fun, interesting gun. If you're bored, try it out. I don't think it's going to be better than a lot of the other options, though. All right, everybody, on to the C9. But before I jump into that, I want to talk about TGD a little bit, do a little self-promo. So if you guys appreciate all the work that goes into these videos, I know I don't make that many videos anymore, but I do try to do in-depth meta update videos every single patch. If you guys appreciate all that work, if you appreciate the website and all the work that goes into keeping the data up to date and getting all these features out and just maintaining and everything, now is probably the best time to support ever, just because TGD is not doing very well. We are down significantly in subscriptions, and that is for a lot of different reasons. Warzone's obviously not doing as well as it has in the past. I don't make as many YouTube videos as I did in the past, so we don't get as much basically advertising through my YouTube channel. And there's also a lot of other competitors that have popped up in the last couple years. And sometimes I feel a little bit used by other creators and the community, and I feel like I haven't really gotten, not necessarily the recognition. I feel like I've gotten the recognition for the most part. Everyone knows who I am. Everyone knows True Game Data. But financially, there's a lot of other people that did 100 times better than I did in the COD scene and are currently still doing way better than I am. So if you want to support the OG source, I've been doing this since basically a month after Warzone released in 2020. Now's the best time to do that. We really appreciate you, whether you were a supporter in the past, whether you're just a viewer, liking, commenting on the videos. All that is just hugely appreciated always. Doesn't matter what you do, we appreciate you. But anyway, let's get back into the C9 here. So I think this is the all-rounder right now. So obviously this isn't suppressed. You can swap out maybe the reinforced barrel for a suppressor if you want less muzzle flash and if you want to stay off the minimap. But this build's really good here. So reinforced barrel, vertical grip for the horizontal recoil, the big mag, commando grip, and then no stock. If I take this into the firing range, no stock doesn't hurt recoil, which is weird. But anyway, it's a beam. It has very, very little recoil, very little screen shake, and it's just really good all around. It's gonna feel consistent compared to the other weapons. It's an absolute top tier choice, even though the TTK is a little worse than some of the other options. Next up, we have the Striker. This is a Modern Warfare 3 weapon, so if you don't have guns leveled, this will be a great option to use. This is probably the best non-Black Ops 6 option out there. The iron sights are okay, but I just couldn't find anything that really made a whole lot of sense to put in the slot besides an optic. So we have the slate reflector. All the suppressors are basically the same. So we threw a suppressor on there, and then this one's a little weird. So the Striker Recon long barrel, you can see in the stats over on the right, I know my face is covering up some of them, but it's only 5% sprint to fire speed penalty, 2% ADS movement speed penalty, which is super, super minimal. And it gives you like 20% extra damage range, which is pretty significant. Extends that out to 14 meters for that first damage range. So I like that. XRK Edge for the underbarrel. This brings your sprint to fire and ADS down. Magazine, 60 round drum. Obviously, you just get the most bullets. I like this gun a lot. I think it feels really good. Take it into the firing range and show you guys real quick. So ADS is not amazing, but it's not awful. You can see compared to the C9 I just talked about, it's a little bit worse. But recoil, really, really good. Really easy to see your target. It's a little bouncier than the C9, but overall, this is still a competitive SMG. I think they nerfed it after my previous meta video because it was still good then. And now it's still good, but just a little bit worse than some of the other options, I think. And it's a solid choice. All right, last up here, we have the PPSh. This is the new SMG for this season. They buffed it to try to make it the meta, and I think they did a good job. I do think it's the meta, but I think it's just by a little bit over some of the other options. I think the C9 is probably close to number 2, but I do think this is the best. So this is the build that I settled on here. I think this is really, really good. There's one downside. So we've got the suppressor, the long barrel, and this long barrel extends your damage range out to 20 meters for the first drop off, which is crazy. Like, that's so far for an SMG. So pretty much all your fights are going to be in the first damage range, and anything from like 11 meters to 20, which is probably, I don't know, 40% of your fights, you're going to have dramatically better TTK than every other SMG out there. Vertical foregrip for the horizontal recoil, extended mag 2, big mag. And then the weird one here, this is one that I had a hard time deciding on, the agility stock. So the agility stock, you can't see the stats because my face is covering it, but the agility stock helps your ADS movement speed significantly, brings it up to 4 meters per second, and it brings your ADS time down to 145 milliseconds, which is just wild. That's like crazy fast ADS time. One of the fastest 165 milliseconds. That's like one of the fastest ADS times we've ever seen on a meta build, but the sprint to fire is 145 milliseconds, which is really bad. So that's why I said you kind of have to play around this and not just sprint into areas and try to fire, because there's going to be a pretty big delay between when you can, actually pull the trigger. But if you ADS walk around, look how fast my ADS movement speed is with this. You'll be ready to go, and you can snap in whenever and fire extremely quickly. So 20 meters of damage range is just crazy. It's so much longer than anything else, and the ADS movement speed is so much better. I think that some people think the recoil feels weird, and I get that. But really, I think that vertical foregrip does enough to make it usable. The reason I chose the suppressor is just because it reduces the muzzle smoke significantly, so you can see your target better. The muzzle smoke and the muzzle flash gets reduced quite a bit with the suppressor. So overall, I think this build is pretty crazy good. Probably really fun to use. I tend to love those fast ADS movement speed builds. So give this a try. If you want something more well-rounded, you can swap over to the balanced stock. So this brings your sprint to fire down to 130, which is still bad. Unfortunately, your ADS goes all the way back up to 215 milliseconds, and your aim down sight movement speed gets quite a bit worse to 3.6 milliseconds. So this is more of an all-rounder if you wanted to use the balanced stock. But I think like the agility stock pushing that ADS time down to 165 milliseconds is totally worth it. Like I said, I think the PPSh is the meta, but we have one last gun to talk about. This is the Kompact 92. This has the fastest TTK in that first damage range, and that tends to be the most important damage range. So I do think this is up there as well. We got the PPSh Compact C9. I think this Compact is the fastest to kill up close. C9 is the best all-rounder. It's got just good stats everywhere, and then the PPSh is going to have that super long damage range, so you can take any fight inside 20 meters and feel pretty good about your situation, as well as high movement speed. So Kompact 92, didn't like the iron sights on this at all, so I put the Kevlar Microflex on there. I tested out these different muzzles, and I liked the ported compensator more than the compensator for this one. I felt like it needed it for the recoil. Vertical foregrip, again, for the recoil. Extended mag and assault grip. This comes out to be pretty controllable, and it still has good TTK in that first range. Just pretty good movement in general. Pretty good ADS. Accuracy-wise, it does have some recoil. Like, I think this one will be a little harder for controller players, just because it has more vertical recoil. But with that ported compensator, it's totally usable. So I think this is up there. I would say PPSh is the meta in my opinion, and then C9 and Kompact 92 are kind of tied for second. They just do very different things. So you got to play for how you want to pick the one for how you play specifically. All right, guys, that's it. As I said when I was going over the C9, TGD is not doing great right now. So if you appreciate everything that goes into all of this stuff to keep you guys updated, virtually the whole community uses TGD. Even the other creators use TGD to create their content. So that's why I feel a little bit used sometimes when I haven't been nearly as successful as other people. People come to TGD to figure out what's the best, and then they make their content on that. So if you want to support the original source, the best way to do that is just a True Game Data subscription. It directly supports us. We get like 97% of this money, whereas, a Twitch sub or a YouTube sub, we only get like 70 or 50% of those things. So this is the best way to do it, and you get access to all the tools that I use in the videos. So Metagen's not up to date for Season 2 yet, but that should be within the next couple days. TTK simulation tool, best stat tool, shots to kill tool. Just a lot of cool things, as well as that new feature that I used in this video. It's coming soon to the regular TTK charts, the weighting curve. That's going to be coming very soon. So whatever you guys do, whether it's just liking, watching the videos, commenting on the videos, we appreciate you so much. The fact that I've been able to do this for 4 years, actually almost 5 years now. It's been four years and like 9 months that I've been doing this full time, which is just crazy. We appreciate you so much. So thank you for all that, and I will see you in the next video.